Welcome back, everyone, to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike.
Good to be here, Mike. Thanks.
Oh, thanks,
Hi, Tommy.
Mike. Hi, Seth. How you doing?
Great.
See? Energy, morning, time.
This is the last. This is the last of our pre-recorded podcast.
After this, it gets
Excited
real.
to be back next week.
Yeah, we will be back next week.
I know it feels a bit like a radio, though. That kind of tone. If we were to keep that up, I feel like we need one of those sound machines, like dun, 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 yeah.
Oh yeah, with the where are you at, Johnny on the spot, Mike?
I don't have a
Great to be here.
yeah. little sound bites.
Clap.
I'm sorry.
Overreaction Monday.
I'll have to update my stuff. The only soundbite I have is.
Oh my gosh!
I can only bleep out bad words that people say. That's the only soundbite I've got. Sorry.
Oh man,
so
that's funny.
Welcome back to the Explicit podcast. So that's basically all.
I think I'm going to need one on my end too.
That's all I got. Anyways, jumping into things here, our topic for today, I think will be an interesting one. I believe this topic came from me. I think this is one that I was kind of picking on here. I was thinking about things. I think maybe this topic came from when I was interviewing people or thinking about interviewing people around Power BI related things. I think this concept works for everything beyond Power BI, but I feel like I have observed people with these different terminologies. Now, there's a lot of nuance to this language here, so bear with me while I try to explain things here. So, I believe the topic for today is the difference between knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And I think they all hold a little bit different connotations. I would maybe lump wisdom and understanding maybe together. They're kind of very much related. I think there's a very nuanced concept around understanding things versus wisdom. Mm-hmm. But I think I've come across this. I feel like I've interviewed people who know a lot of things about Power BI. I feel like I've been able to talk to people who are wise and how they would implement things inside Power BI. But I feel like the fewer and far between is people who understand how the Power BI works and or how the model works behind the scenes.
So just for the sake of clarity and the English language, we should probably refer to the dictionary and the definitions of these words because they are different.
Yes, but
right?
I think knowledge and understanding would be the largest gap. Wisdom and understanding, there might be a slighter, less of a definition gap there.
You've got it wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh man.
So knowledge.
Right, this is why we talk about this.
Knowledge is what you've learned, right?
Correct.
Like your learnings of things. Understanding is how you apply the knowledge in certain situations or against something. And this would be something like, hey, you learn a new DAX measure. You understand that this is a good use case for where you would apply it. Wisdom.
Oh, wait. I want to keep going with that. I think your definition of understanding is a little bit not fully fleshed out there.
Hang on. Let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
Look this stuff up.
All right.
So,
wisdom is using knowledge and understanding to apply discernment. It's where you've got it. It's the experience part of all of your built knowledge, understanding, and application over time that allows you to take those two things and really like add the secret sauce to it essentially. So if you want to like take 5 minutes here and look these things up on your own.
No, I did.
And then especially
with me, I have them and they're in the notebook, so you don't need to get snappy. It's there, and I think your definition of wisdom is actually wrong.
If you want to see it, Seth Snappy, please go back like 2 episodes.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and also for us too, and I want to put this little spin in here too. For us, in our own backgrounds, our own faith backgrounds, wisdom is a very powerful word.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Right.
Yes.
That makes a big point. So wisdom is the ability to understand, while knowledge is just basically are able to learn because of our intellect alone. Wisdom helps us discern.
I think there's a discernment portion of wisdom. I think, I think we all agree knowledge is just things right? I can go read a book and I get the things around knowledge. And there's a lot of people who are very smart who know a lot of things, but they're just like they're just fact spitters, right?
Yeah.
we don't really ever able to get anything done. Where I think it's a stacking capability, I think wisdom is a very good thing, and it's also taking all of your knowledge. And I want to define it like, to me, wisdom is taking the knowledge you have and using it in a, educated, sensible way, right? So it's taking all of your decisions and making sound judgments, be able to evaluate the knowledge and make, kind of like the best decision based on the information that you have. So I think wisdom and understanding are very clear. Where I think understanding is a little bit different, and where I would say it's harder for people to understand Power BI is it's taking your insights and awareness and all of the wisdom you have, right? Okay, I'm looking at these 4 different options, and now you're able to see connections and implications. There's other depth to the understanding portion. So maybe you could lump wisdom and understanding in the same together, but I don't think that's necessarily wisdom.
So words matter. And if we rewound 15 seconds, you would have just heard yourself say, I would apply my knowledge and understanding. Right. Like how I would describe wisdom is using my understanding of all these things. And yes, that's it. That's exactly why I'm making the argument. It's knowledge, understanding, wisdom, because it's the secret sauce on top of those things. Because like I said, I think understanding is that step up, right? It is also, I think, the challenge where I'd love to talk about the interview aspect of this, because I think that's where more of the interesting part of the conversation is.
Yes.
As opposed to semantics. But I think semantics are important. And another, I'm just going to say, another trigger point for me is where people start saying, like, when we're talking about definitions of things, I don't care how you feel or what they mean to you. It's like, there's a definition and it means this, right? Because it's words. So that's why I'm saying, like, hey, can we agree on knowledge is book smarts? How you it's like
comprehend,
understanding, it's applied mathematics. I learn about the math function and these things.
Yes.
I learned that this is DAX and this is how I would do that.
Yeah.
Understanding where to use them in a specific use case is applying knowledge, right? So I understand how to do that.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that I can collectively or have the experience to understand like how the model works. When you're applying wisdom to this, I don't even know if it really applies to some degree. Maybe it's like where it steps way out, where you're looking at the ecosystem. You are architecting, maybe it is where you're architecting like how all this knits together, and you're taking like an ambiguous idea of like a business unit that says, hey, I want to do all these things. And you're like, wow, okay, well, let me see how all these pieces fit together. I'm going to take all of my applied knowledge of the things I've learned, the understanding of how I've applied them, and I'm going to create this net new thing that I haven't done before. And I'm able to do that because I have the wisdom to be able to figure out like all these different pieces. That's whether or not we agree. Like it's kind of how I think about
and that's totally okay. And I'm telling you, like, as looking at the definitions and how I perceive I think the definition of understanding contains definitions of both wisdom and knowledge to get to the point where understanding occurs. So if we're talking in an interview, right? If I'm personally trying to look for people, again, we're very much nuancing on the words here, right? If I had to pick from 3 different people,
like literally from the Webster dictionary that I'm reading, I'm like,
well, I see what you're saying. I think you're.
But there's like a part of this. What I think understanding is when you're I'm looking at the dictionary definition, right? There's some other similar words like compassion, empathy. There's a human part of this one. There's other similar words like intellect, intelligence, mind, brain power, right? I'm literally reading from the Oxford right now. So like these are the things that we're talking about, and so I'm seeing that as going, when I'm seeing the definition of understanding, I think the definition of that is now combining, wisdom is around decisions and judgments pieces. And maybe that's more of the human word of understanding, right? Maybe it's more of a human capability there. But I think the understanding is like, not that I have empathy for Power BI, but the idea is like I can foresee what things will happen before I even build them. Like And I would
I would say
communicate
that's wisdom.
I would say
It's
that's
not an
wisdom. Wisdom is
understanding.
the pinnacle. Yeah.
What?
Understanding is my ability to comprehend the different knowledge that I have, how it works together. Wisdom is the ability to make the right decision and to be able to understand how the context works. If you were to put it outside of the definition.
I'm gonna go find your Oxford, because the real one, dictionary.com, don't you know, is like the literal definition of wisdom: the ability or result of an ability to think and act utilizing knowledge,
Yep.
experience, understanding, common sense, and insight. I'm saying my argument is like understanding
I see what you're saying.
component of wisdom.
Okay.
It's not the other way around, because I think it is a building block, because like learned thing. I like even put this into practice, right?
Sure.
You learn something new. There is okay, great. I now think I know how to write this syntax. That's knowledge. I've learned how to write syntax. I have a situation where I need to apply that bit of knowledge. I understand I can apply it here, right?
Yes.
To me, it's very much in the technical realm. Knowledge apply. I understand the situations of where I could apply this thing.
Yes.
I learn how to go, streamline this query. I can go find situations, and I understand where I've applied this. I'm going to go like make that thing. Then it's like, then where you throw in experience is where you could in my mind, you could say, hey, there's some wisdom that you could apply around like this guy being able, or girl being able to do something that exceeds just knowledge and application. And I think what's important about that is that is exactly where I think there's stumbling blocks in interviews and trying to find people who have the level of discernment of where you could drop them in to your situations, and them go, all right, give me a couple days to like familiarize myself with the area. I now know where I am just purely based on you dropping me in here. I can apply all of these things because I have that level of discernment. I'm using all the things I've learned, and I understand, right, how you built them.
Sure.
I'm going to go recreate this thing, or I'm going to do what you need me to do. That is the missing piece in many people.
And when you say someone has it,
that's experience based.
Agree.
So someone has it, they may not have all the knowledge either, but you can trust them that they will get the knowledge because they have the wisdom to know how to get it. Like, so I want to throw you into something. Yeah.
I'm going to skip on the terms now. So we're going to disagree on how these words fit together. I still disagree with your analogy of that one. I think in an interview, if I'm using words with an interview, so I'm going to transition over to interview things, right? Okay. If I'm looking in an interview, I would never use the word wisdom in an interview. It just wouldn't make sense, right? But I do think that's just a word that just came to mind, and I felt like it's a good word in this scenario. But really what I'm thinking about here is, or what I would like to pivot the conversation more towards is the difference between knowledge and understanding, right? Those are the two things I want to kind of more focus on. And I think we agree on the difference between those pieces, and would have a better time, debating, like, or even talking through, like, when you're doing an interview and when someone shows up with knowledge, you can kind of tell. And something that Seth and I have done on some interviews, and I think is actually very telling, is when you get someone into an interview, ask some your questions, but you propose situations or challenges. Hey, in this situation, this is happening. You have a model, it's been given to you, it's running slow. What do you do? And then listen to the answers, because, Seth and myself have the understanding of like, okay, if this model is slow or you have a report that's not doing well, we have in our minds a way on how we would tackle that. And we're looking for your answer to kind of like align against that. Have you had the experience of doing this kind of activity and solving it? So that's the kind of people I think you want on your team.
Well, but at the same time, like, what level are you hiring for? Right? Because that's actually
another good question.
Yes. Because you point that out. But one of the keywords in there is experience. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're looking for regardless, right? Mm-hmm. Like, at certain levels. Like, if you have somebody with zero experience but a lot of knowledge, you can typically shape and work with that.
Yes.
I can't have the same expectations related to like, hey, I'm going to paint a scenario for you. Am I going to ask every candidate that question? Of course, because I want to know how you think. But I will definitely be able to tell whether or not you've gone through that process, because we have a shared experience then, right? There are when you put yourself in positions where you've worked through problems,
Yes.
you automatically know when somebody else has worked through the same problem.
Yeah,
in a
exactly
slightly
right.
different way,
Well,
right?
more,
And that's
yeah.
what you're trying to explore in interviews. That is the nuanced part of the conversation, but it's hard to it's very hard to frame questions and get there.
More importantly, you're not looking for someone just for the situation that you have. You're looking for situations that will come up that you don't know. Most of the things that we're able to discern and make decisions off of are usually new models or new situations, but we have that ability, or we have the discernment to be able to take all of the knowledge that we have and then choose basically from that repository to go, what do I need to apply in this situation?
Mhm.
That's what I would call, that's the
yeah,
understanding that we're talking about here. We're talking about prior knowledge, even if you haven't seen the same problem. Like you may
Right.
come up with a brand new problem that you've never seen before.
right.
The fact that you have things that were similar or had, or
I
you
know
can
you
extrapolate
research.
from, yeah, you can extrapolate from, oh, I know DAX potentially causes problems. Oh, I know when DAX creates multiple tables and has to union them together inside one statement, that's what causes problems. So you may encounter something brand new, but you're using prior knowledge,
100%.
while bolting that together, understand how the program is actually working, and now you're able to say, okay, I can solve this XYZ because I understand it.
I'm not interested.
We're not gonna get away from
Yeah.
this one.
Okay.
Because in this situation, I would say you understand what the problem is. You understand that there's an error. You understand that there are like some steps that you need to take, but many of the cases are such that it's like, well, I haven't encountered this one before.
Yeah.
My experience, right, or my full understanding of this ecosystem allows me to think through this problem and how to solve it in different ways, and that gives me like more of the experience and the discernment. And that's where I say you can understand the components. It's the wisdom of like
It's the
taking
wisdom,
all of
because
what's given to you to solve the problem, right? And you're consistently building, I think, those levels of, call it whatever it is,
Yeah.
like levels of growth
Yep.
in environments, in technical stacks, in ecosystems that allow you to, I think, architect solutions, solve
Yes.
problems,
Right.
figure out where be the guy that can
Yes.
just like ping the machine right
Because-
where it needs to be, instead of
fired up.
the vast majority of folks that have to level up into that realm.
And just because I've sat in a pizza shop for 10 years doesn't make me a master pizza maker. In the same way, just because you have 10
that
years
is such a great
experience,
point.
Yep.
It's such
you
a
know,
great point.
and
That's
that's
a
a
good
big
point.
part. And
I do love pizza.
Here we go talking food again, and I love it. I love
Yeah,
it because
yes.
what it is the difference between somebody who's who is the side guy, or whatever they call them, like where they're on the they're doing salads. They do 10 years of salads. They're in a kitchen where there's a guy doing steak, where there's a guy doing. I thought it was, but I didn't want to use the word chef.
Chef is the side. That's
So
the system.
it's 10 years of that. Versus like right next to him is the guy who does all of the steaks and the sides, and then there's the head chef, right? Well, did you learn all of the other jobs study under the head chef in those 10 years, or did you just have your back to them the entire 10 years and make your salads? Right. And that is the difference, right? That is absolutely the difference between a lot of folks who just work in business. You have this is all I know, and that's what you do for 10 years.
1,000%.
Your 10 years of experience is still only in that area, right?
You haven't had the chance to get knowledge across other areas.
You didn't branch out.
And so you didn't get the knowledge in these other areas. Therefore, you don't have the understanding of how these, like, you know how to build reports, you know how to build bookmarks, but we don't know how to get you from there to optimizing models, cleaning things down, building star schemas. You're not doing that work. You've been only focusing your skills or your knowledge in one area, so your understanding of the whole system is insufficient. It won't let you get above that.
I've always been more interested in those interviews, less what they know, because I'm always going to find someone, the same point that you guys have had. I've sat with people going, I like this person. They seem to know everything. They've been in it for 5 years. Everything I've asked, they've answered. And then I asked them to build a report. I give them a situation, come back, and I was like, this looks like my son drew it. And I couldn't believe how the model was, despite the ability for this person to talk through it.
That's because that's slightly different, but like They knew it.
They've
They had the
learned.
book knowledge.
The
They didn't
book
have the
knowledge,
understanding of it.
right? And so when I talk to people, I am looking for someone, even if they don't have the experience, and honestly, and if they're new, maybe not all the knowledge yet, but if I can see they're going to at least have the wisdom to try to understand that I can't just learn one thing,
Hmm.
I have to apply this in different ways. That's like what I'm looking for, because this is less about I need you to build an application, so I need you to have 10 years of Python or whatever experience, where this technology is going to change every 2 months. So I need someone who has that wherewithal to basically understand, to learn and adapt, because we're not doing the same thing we're doing 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think what I want to clarify here though is like there are
Talking
different
really fast.
positions.
Yeah.
There are different positions, and there is no one size fits all.
Yeah.
Like you're also not going to always get the high caliber individual because you're not going to want to pay for them. But that's why they're the high caliber individual. They have all of these things. But I think what we are suggesting here, and this isn't I want to make a clarifying point. Like this isn't a conversation around like, oh, we're judging people's smartness and think. No, there are levels of how do you put yourself in a position to elevate yourself, right? And much of this comes with building your knowledge base, but also the practical application of that in many different areas, I think is what sets people apart. The challenge in interviewing is there are a lot of people with knowledge nowadays, but the experience is either very small, right? So they can speak to the breadth, but they haven't done the breadth. And sussing that out in an interview, especially as it relates to positions where you have higher expectations. And I think that for me is the distinction is I'm doing an interview in both cases. I absolutely want to pick the right person, but what I'm doing is I have to make sure, like in a very short period of time, ensure that I'm putting that person in a position to succeed, because I am going to have very high expectations at some point in time, depending on what the role is. So either like, I have high expectations anyway, but like the higher the role is, the more independent you need to be. And you can't be that unless you have definitely knowledge, the understanding of how to apply, and you're already broaching into this, experience level where like we're talking, I can drop you into an area and you just run with it, as opposed to, somebody having to guide you and lead you at every step of the, path to push you in directions to keep you on task.
Yes, I agree with your statements. And I want to you had mentioned a statement here a couple minutes ago that I did want to go back to. And I really liked your point that you're emphasizing there are different roles of what you need to hire for. Yeah. And I think hiring managers actually have a large miss around, they don't know what they're hiring for. Yeah. They say, we need someone to do Power BI. So I need to do Power BI. And you say, well, what does that mean? Like, can you tell me how, like, so a service that I offer to our clients is like, hey, do you want to help hiring people? Have me come in and do the technical interview. And they're like, yeah, we'd love that. It sounds great. Okay, cool. Let me, what are you hiring for? They're like, Power BI. I'm like, well, time out. There's more than just, you don't just hire for Power BI, because to your point, Seth, right? If you hire just for, do you know everything about Power BI? You're looking at an architect. You're looking at someone who's got a very high pay rate. They understand data engineering, star modeling, building reports, creating data models, optimizing DAX, tuning performance,
adoption, governance,
and they're talking about adoption and governance. And like, to get someone with that level of experience, like that is a weighted question. So the question really becomes, what do you need them to do, right? What is what's the role? Are they going to come in and they're going to just pound out reports on a model that someone else built? Or are they expected to modify that model or make the model from scratch? So this is where I've been using very heavily this thing called the skills matrix. We had one from the website, right?
Trademark Seth Bow.
100%. Seth went through and just like really elaborated. And I would say a lot of our skills matrix focused on the DAX, the report building, that experience of things. I think I've expanded in recent months around that experience. Around, it's actually bigger than that, right? There is the release manager, a Power BI admin? What should they know? What should they be comfortable with? And I do think there is this concept of there's a report builder, there's a data modeler, an administrator for Power BI, and then there's this. People may disagree with me, but I think there's this other role around a release manager. And now with the addition of premium, Git pipelines, Git integrations with workspaces themselves, and now a PBIP, there is some more work around, okay, I'm not just building reports and publishing them from desktop anymore. We now are talking about a full continuous improvement, continuous development process. So there does need to be more control. And I think in some situations, it makes a lot of sense to have that that continuous improvement person, because developers should focus on the dev environment, and there's someone else who we need to limit access to for security reasons or financial, whatever, right? There's more regulated areas of the business that you can't see test or prod. It's just not available to you.
Do you think there's, like in that matrix though, it strikes me, do you think there's a difference in whether or not those are qualities that are always needed? Like,
I don't think so.
And I would agree. Like, I think
yeah,
when you're a business unit on the front lines where they need Power BI person to like start putting things together, like you're not going to be talking about Git. Right?
No, you
won't. However,
Mm-hmm.
if we're talking about a BI developer, right?
Yes.
/ data engineer, whatever, how you like, and that's what it's part of the ecosystem.
Yes.
And they need to know Power BI because you're going to be building some things there. Like that's where that sort of structure comes in. Yeah.
And I'd also would agree here too, right? When you have a small organization, you will want to pay more money for those resources because you're going to need someone who's going to have more skills covering more of these areas.
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of times what I find is there is a person on the team that starts as the report builder and data modeler. They learn and they actually gain the skills that they need to become an administrator, a release manager, and then maybe even they start dabbling in embedded experiences. But I mean, if you, it depends on how you're using Power BI, right? If you're just using Power BI, the portal.com, you don't need someone who understands embedding of reports. But if you want to build something or you're adding an application that's going to embed those reports somewhere else, well, now you need someone who understands Power BI, what it can do, and how would you embed it, and what you can modify in the embedded experience to make the app and the report play well, like it's as if it was one item. So that's where things I think get really interesting here from this perspective. So anyways, a lot of words to say, Seth. I really agreed with your comment there. And I think just level setting as a hiring manager on what you expect them to do, either near term or long term, it helps really well. Having that lens, you ask questions around those areas, and then you assess, right? Oh, this interviewer is very strong on data modeling, okay on report building, and has no experience in the admin portal. Because again, a lot of times that's a very hard role to find because there's not many people actually in the admin portal doing that. That's a very small group of people in an organization. So again, you're looking for a unicorn sometimes around, walk me through all the settings in the admin portal. What do we set? They may not know that because they've never seen them before. They can go read the Microsoft documentation, they can learn it, but that will be an area where you say, look, I need this person to get trained or schooled or studied around information about what is the best way to release things. Do they have a solid strategy around deployment pipelines, right? That's that release manager piece. What is the organization there? How do we have certified data and regular organizational data? What does that grow up path look like? You need that release manager to understand how that is implicated inside your organization.
And I think there's a bigger picture here too, where it's very much like I can't teach this person, or I can't rely on this person to like ask for training, where it's like he's got to learn if I give him something or I give her something that maybe they've never seen the admin portal because they never had access to it. That's not their fault, but I need to be able to trust that person if that's something I want them to do, that they are going to, find out not just the knowledge of the settings, but what are the right settings to do.
There's your understanding, right? It's the understanding of those things. Like you can know what the setting does, but it's the understanding applied to that setting that helps you say, okay, we really do have why would someone may say, well, just use security groups. Well, why would you use the security groups? What's the point of that? how do you want to control that? And then, as you get further down this road, you can see, oh, wow, look at how many security groups we've created. And now when I'm trying to add or move large groups of people to and from an app, an audience, those things, it becomes much easier now, because instead of adding individual people, you're just adding a single group of people with this. Like, it just makes so much more sense.
And I think that is what you try to find in interviews, is people who have knowledge and have applied understanding before, right?
Yes.
Because
yes,
in the same way, and then that can escalate into other areas.
Yeah.
Right. So Tommy, it's like, okay, what are you looking for? Well, I know that you've spent 8 years making salads. I see that you've been studying under the steak guy, right? The steak person. Like, do you like walk me through like your process of how you learn that? And where people are like, okay, well,
that's a good question.
When I make salads, here's the components of all the things I have to put together and make sure I have in front of me. The steak guy got to do the same thing, albeit the ingredients are different, right? The largest challenge for me is with salads, everything's cold. With steaks, you've got to figure out like temperatures, and this is how we do that. And like, so like that type of conversation, even though this person is not near the master at making steaks as they are salads, they've showed you that they have an understanding of how to traverse these two areas. And that's what you're promoting here, Tommy. And why I want to lean in here a little bit, because it's not just interview, right? Yeah. But it comes out in there where you're trying to look through those components of, can people accrue the knowledge they have and then apply it in different areas? Because that cycle of, hey, I'm interested in another area, so much so, right, that I understand how to apply some of the same principles I've had, or can learn something new, is constant in this job. Constant, like where you're new situations, new business unit, brand new data sets, like
fabric.
And I think that's what it is, a very important quality for people that you look for in an interview. But for folks that want to grow their careers, that it's a perfect analogy to say, hey, are you branching out with your knowledge of the different areas within Power BI? Do you know how to traverse some of these other things? Are you doing them on your own? Because those are the types of exercises that you flex, and you start to gain additional knowledge about how these systems and processes work. And this is where like an intelligence comes in, right? It's the ability to retain all of this knowledge all the time. But I think that's why you hear a lot in how we talk and communicate with people is, if the way I equate intelligence is, well, if that's the ability to retain knowledge, what happens if you don't apply that knowledge?
Mm-hmm.
You lose it. So if you want to keep your intelligence on a subject or an area high, that requires consistent learning, consistent engagement, right? That's a necessary component of you skilling up, is you making this a part of your daily interaction to like just learn something, right? Like apply something new, because that is the incremental building blocks for you to gain more and more and more experience and have like higher levels of understanding and wisdom, if we're going to apply that to this situation as well.
You're getting me fired up. Allow me to take this a little further.
Turn up the gas.
Turn up the heat, baby. But think if I'm talking to that salad person and I'm talking to them, they're like, well, and I hear something to the effect of, well, I try to make the salad when I know the steak guy is this far into it, because I know the salad will come out, like the nuance, like, and it's maybe my philosophical background, but like, why am I making the salad? When does it come out compared to the steak? I know this is a little detailed, but the idea of the context of why are they doing what they do, and are they doing it the right way? If I hear that from someone, where even though they've only had this role, but they're thinking about those other questions, you're hired, or like that is the idea of they're not just doing their role, but they're trying to understand, like, well, why are we building this data model, or who is this report for?
Yes.
Do we need to keep doing it this way? Is there a better way?
There's a lot of human, so we talk about the people, the process, and the technology a lot, right?
Right.
The technology does a lot of great things for us, but there is a lot of human side of this. And, the last, I think it was one of the articles. I'm getting very lost in the podcast and which is happening in the future or in the past. But
only
at some point in the next couple
about?
weeks, at some point in the next couple of weeks, there's a podcast around talking through, your team and thinking through. I lost the point. Anyways, I think the point I'll fall back on here is, Seth, you ask a question that happens very often in interviews. And I think this is a great question because there's a very human side of the people and the process side of things that you do need to hire for, especially when you're communicating to business and working with IT. You are that bridge gap between both departments. And so you ask, what have you learned recently? And can you teach it to me? Right? So, I think we would all agree that if we can identify someone with a learning, teachable heart, if they want to come in, if they're hungry to get more information, if they're hungry to get to that place where they understand, hey, I know there's 5 ways of doing this. I want to understand which one is the best one. How can I use that to understand how the thing works? Because once you understand how it works, you can then implement it. And I feel like that is a really good way of kind of teasing that out. And it doesn't even have to be about Power BI. It's just what have you learned recently? Did you read a book about it? Did you watch a video on it? How did that process work for me? Talk me through that, right? Yeah. Did you watch something and then go do it on your desktop or build something, or did you go create something so you understood what it was doing? That to me, I'm listening not only for what you did learning, how long ago that was, but I'm also listening for what were their communication skills? Can they do something that I know nothing about, and can I understand what they're trying to accomplish? Can I relate to it? And if they can convey that message, I mean, this is the whole thing around communication. And this is getting a lot bigger than I thought initially was.
You're only talking about
the same way we use words to communicate to each other. There's a common understanding of the words. We're doing the same thing with the visuals. The visuals are also communicating.
Sure.
And I was watching a TED Talk where they were talking about, well, when I'm talking to you, my brain wavelengths are doing a certain pattern. As I'm communicating to you, I'm trying to get your brain to wavelength the same way mine is. That is the conveying of information. But we're doing the same thing with the data tables. We're doing the same thing with the visuals. We're trying to convey a story, a message, an answer, some deeper meaning with that visual, but it is that deeper meaning is being communicated through the report. So we want good communicators.
I'll tell you what, I would hate to see our data patterns or our brain wavelengths together.
They're all over the place.
If you were to see our data thing, it would break the machine.
I think there's only like one little part of my brain just actually ever running. Everything else is just idle all the time.
I think, the one point I'm going to lean into, I read some comments that kind of irked me on LinkedIn, related to data folks in general. I think not data folks. Let's bring this back. All of us have a propensity to oversimplify and generalize other areas of experience and expertise.
Sure.
If we've never spent any time there. One of the areas I think this happens a lot is in data versus visualization or UI UX.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a wealth of knowledge out there that you can tap into that would bring your insights about how people ingest data visually that would 100% make you spend more time in the visualization area to quote unquote make things look good. And there's a lot of negativity, I think, sometimes around folks poo-pooing others, around saying like, hey, there's absolutely a place and a time to make the report look good with these certain characteristics of designing intentionally, so that the data, which is a very important component you're trying to convey and communicate,
yes,
right, something. So it is like that's the backbone, but at the same point, it's very much akin to your example just now of our wavelengths of how to talk to each other, right? Can I say something very important but yell at you? Yes. Is that going to resonate?
All the time. Happens all the time.
Yeah, do it all the time.
Right? Is that going to resonate the same way as
It totally
me being
resonates. Yeah.
calm?
Yeah. I can relate to that one, Seth.
Oh, more than I want to.
Hey, part of the visual experience is just the death face, man.
That's color in his bar charts are red.
The tone thing. Yeah, right. Maybe I shouldn't have started with that one.
maybe you should have led with a different point.
Oh, that was therapy.
Versus calm, right?
Yes, correct.
In an even measured tone, like what is going to be received better?
Yes.
Is it me screaming at you, or is it like this? So, and I think that's how I equate like some of this, where it's like, can I brute force throw just data at you? Yeah. Can you digest it? Yeah. But it's not nearly going to be as easy if it's not toned over, right? You gave my secret sauce away, like, or at least one of my favorite questions out of my interviews. Sorry. Dude, shout out to Jess Borland, who now works at Microsoft. She was an old colleague of mine. Loved working with her. That was her favorite question.
Oh, nice.
Teach me something.
Yeah.
Because to your point, I think teaching is a completely different level of skill, right? And let's not, like, I think there is a significant difference in my mind between, like I said, depending on role and position, but it's about communication. Can you articulate the thoughts behind, what I'm asking? Or can you comprehensively take something, and sometimes hey, you know what? The answer is, did you know that there's this stack function and it allows you to do this and this and this, and like very technical, versus, hey, we're going to talk about models, or we're going to talk about Azure. Wow, that's a big topic to cover in 3 minutes, but go for it. Right?
Yeah.
But it's can you communicate well, right? I think that's what you're aiming for. But it's super important, our job. Super important. Can you convey to the business what they need to understand without using calculated columns and measures? Right?
Yes.
Well, and I think it's business users even more now in this third era of analytics now, where honestly, think about too what you're going to hear in interviews or what people are expected to know in this called the age of fabric. I think this is a very interesting place that we're going, where all the technology and the builds up there. What are we expecting from people? Like, what am I expecting from people in different roles? What am I expecting to hear from an interview? Because we're going to hear too, like in 2 months, someone has 2 years of experience in fabric, and you're going to go, really,
8 years of experience.
Yeah. And they're like,
realistically, if you're using Databricks, if you're using pipelines and if you tell me you have 3 years of Synapse experience that I'm now translating into Fabric, then I'll believe you. But if you tell me you've got 2 years of Fabric experience, I'm going to say, no. But where did you get that Fabric experience from? Can you give me some references there?
But again,
it's important to clarify. Well, I've been sewing for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Too, Fabric is also just a broad thing where it could be Power BI, it could be just the data flows, or it could be the Synapse in the data factory.
It just muddies
it. And I don't think I'm not expecting someone to be a master of each product in Fabric. I think that's way ridiculous to even expect. You're the administrator, you're the report builder, you're the data engineer, that notebooks as well as DAX. Like, is that what you should expect from each person? I think that would be.
I believe the person, if you looked for that person, you're looking for a more rare person. And even in my team, I've delineated individuals against, hey, you're really good at notebooks and you're really good at software development code writing. Like, that's a learned skill that has taken many years of time. There are team members on my team that do that really, really well. There are also team members on my team that do visualizations really, really well. And to find someone who understands all of that, and that's been a lot of what I've been doing, is trying to invest what I know in my mind about all these different types of tools, how to bring them all together. And there's been a lot of education on my team to make sure every person on my team knows as much as I can give them around all these different tools. So now now you have that team member that can pull all the things together. And this is when I want to go back to just really briefly here is when you answer what level are you hiring for, this matters now, because the idea is you need to identify what they're strong at and where do they need help, knowing that you're going to have to teach them. So like the idea is, like, if I'm a hiring manager, I'm going to drop someone in right away as a Power BI admin. I better make sure they've either had experience doing it they align with my methodologies or thinking around what administration is going to be doing, because I don't want to let someone in there go wild with, and they're making decisions on very important things that we wouldn't agree with as an organization. So there is this idea of, okay, you have minimal knowledge in this area, but I just want to make sure you can learn it, because we're going to get you some formal training, or I, the manager, will have to slow down, increase your knowledge in this area, so that way you're thinking on the same wavelength that I am when we talk about administration. And that only comes with, so a lot of times I feel people are like, well, I don't want to stop. I can't, it's just easier if I just do it. I get it. I understand it is. It would be faster if you just do it because you already know all the things, but you don't scale yourself well. You can't, like in anything, you can't scale yourself unless you slow down, teach somebody else that thing, and then they can do the same, level of quality around building, managing whatever that thing is later on. So I think that's just a really good point that you made there, Tommy.
Yeah. And honestly, I want to touch on one last part there too, that as we get closer to the end, the scaling yourself is big. And I think that was a mistake that I made too, where I was so like, I got to know everything and got to be that person where the next thing you know, you're like, you want people to rely on you. But at the same point, like we talked about this actually. I think Seth, you said this a while ago too. That's not a great skill. And if anything, that's almost to your detriment. With you're the only person who knows this, even though like maybe that's your personality. Like I think for all three of us, you give us a topic and next thing we're going to soak it in. We're going to find everything about it.
Yeah,
but
totally.
That's half of the story, man. Like if you can't teach it, if you don't teach it, and if you can't scale that in an organization or to others, well, how good is it really?
Oh man, you're hitting on another topic. I think this is one of the reasons why so there's a lot of communities of people out there doing great things. There's a lot of people that are doing, very fun to be engaged with. I will say for me personally, I have really liked the Excel community, the data community, Power BI community. The people in that area seem to have some kind, and maybe this is what you're talking about earlier, Seth, right? The data community needs to understand how to talk to somebody, hear what they're saying, and build reports or visuals or things on top of it. So maybe there's a higher emphasis on people refining or working on that communication skills level, or let me bring you along for the journey. Like, here, I've learned something, you should learn it too. There's this concept. I think that maybe there's maybe an emphasis on that skill inside the data community. And that's why that's why I'm drawn to it. I'm so energized, and partly also I'm an extrovert, right? So I love being around people in general. But in addition to that, I really like our community. I really like the way that people are, regularly sharing things. They're putting things on YouTube and social medias. I'm learning from them. They're learning from me. And this is really encouraging to me. And I really like that layer or that lens of how this community is running. So, my kind of, we're getting closer to wrapping up, but as we think about the data community, I've really enjoyed it. I've met a lot of wonderful people all over the world who are very easy and willing to spend a little bit of time here or there helping me learn something, or answering a question I have, or helping me tease out these different ideas. And this is one of our kind of main points around the Explicit Measures podcast. Yeah. Tommy has said it before. This is like my therapy session for the week, right? It's going to be rough for Tommy this next couple of weeks because, we're going. This is the recorded episode, so we're at the end of it. So actually, Tommy may come back of a different person when we come back from all the recordings. We'll see what happens. We're going to have a really deep therapy. Yeah, it's going to have to be a deep tissue massage to get the therapy out for this next
maybe
episode
from across the ocean.
Exactly. So I do agree. I think there's definitely it's also harder when you find yourself on an island where there's not people like this around you that you can invest in, and they're investing in you. And I think it's been nice to see the community that we can plug into the internet, which can provide any level of community things that you need to some degree. It's not the same as in person all the time. Anyways, sorry, I got really reflective there for a moment.
Well, I think that it's going to be a few weeks until we talk again.
Maybe I'm mourning here a bit. There's a little bit of mourning that's occurring here. That there's going to be a couple of weeks of not seeing Seth and or Tommy. What am I going to do? What am I going to do for 2 weeks here while
we got one more episode live next week.
That's true. This is really weird because this is like I'm talking about the future, but this is actually in the future. So I'll stop. This is just really. This is very bad.
Existential.
Very existential.
Philosophical conversation about knowledge, understanding, and wisdom.
It's like it's not like we're time travelers. We're literally doing time traveling.
Ooh.
I mean, I can't wait to see you on Tuesday.
Excellent. Well, any final thoughts, gentlemen, on this one? Any interesting word topic at the beginning? The title may not be representative of this hiring piece that we've been talking about more recently, but I think those words are a good lead into thinking about, do I know things or do I understand them as it relates to people, skills, hiring considerations as a manager? Any other final thoughts you kind of wrap this with?
I think
Tommy?
we covered a lot. Well, I'm just going to step in.
Go, Seth.
Instead. We covered a breadth of experience of areas, right? Some of that interviewing, some of the where people are at right now, and the value behind it. And I think if there's a theme throughout all of it, leveling up, skilling up, increasing your knowledge, your understanding, wisdom, etc., requires consistent engagement, whether that be learning, application, or to some degree listening to us on the Explicit Measure podcast. Like, this is the value we get out of it, because not to the degree of what
I'm not sure we're really that great.
it's the conversation,
yes.
And the thought juice, right? Like,
yes,
thinking
correct.
about all of the different areas that we talk about technically or in the business intelligence areas that keep you engaged, keep you thinking about things, and that's exactly what you should be doing in your technical spaces as well.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, hey man, you get one ride, right? So make the most of it. And for all of your times that we spend doing other things, spending 15 minutes a day. What do they say? Like if you practice something, for 15 minutes a day, like there's some exponential curve that puts you in a different playing field. It's not hard to do. Like, it's just consistency. So that's my final thought.
Mine is simple. How much better to get wisdom and gold to get insight rather than silver?
Whoa.
So yes, little.
All right.
Ooh, profound.
Nice. I like it. With that, we thank you very much for your ears. We know your time is valuable. We hope we added some value to your hour here through talking through things and arguing about stuff and thinking through other concepts here. So hopefully this helped a little bit.
And yelling.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully this helped a little bit throughout your day. We appreciate your time. We know it's valuable. Our only ask is if you support us by either subscribing or liking it. It helps us, pushes out to other people. Also, the best thing is let somebody else know that you are loving the podcast. There's a couple things here that a couple nuggets you took away. Someone else may need to hear this or think about these things. Again, this is not the answer. This is just purely a way of teasing out thoughts and thinking through things additionally. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
Well, you can continue to find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe, leave us a rating. It helps us out a ton. If you have a question, an idea, or topic that you want us to talk about on a future episode, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave us a mailbag question. Maybe it's about wisdom, understanding, or knowledge. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. at the Power BI Tips social media channels.
Awesome. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.